we started to look at the potentials for treasures, like where in this building do we find the treasures and what are considered treasures, and could we possibly propose other treasures or other highlights? And we also played with the scale of those, so like can a tiny little gesture or a tiny little animal figure, get the same amount of attention as, a massive piece of art which is meant to be watched there. So just looking at these hierarchies of or priorities of the room. Through all of these practical experiments that we went through throughout the week, two questions really kind of reveal themselves. One is whether we are trying to blend in or whether we are trying to stand out. Like, are we trying to use the environment of the museum and the convention and the normative behavior as the grounds for whatever we are doing? Or are we trying to disrupt that environment, And the second question that really kind of stood out for me was, if the museum is a space where you come to look at stuff, how can our choreographic proposal encourage looking for something? So looking for something rather than looking at something. And that's where the idea of the treasure hunt also kind of comes, the investigative, the searching for alternative treasures. And through that curiosity, propose a different hierarchy of the room, what is given attention and what is not given attention. So we used this game as a starting point to compose, to start to craft a little miniature composition, which could be used as one of the ways to interact with the potential audience or to invite them to participate. Audience participation is just as much about installing a curiosity and possibly facilitating an attention for something in particular. And this game was a very good example of how that attention was installed and then potentially unraveled into something else of a more choreographic nature. As we were doing this retracing of the research so far, we kind of realized that the treasure hunt, which we have used as a kind of common imaginary of a form, also applies to the overall process. Our journey from residency to residency also somehow resembles that treasure hunt on a larger scale. In the exhibition in Kunsthal where we were working, the exhibition is designed as a kind of maze, and this architectural design of the space inspired us to explore spatial relations, perspective, and orientation, navigation. And this idea of backtracking we used as an evaluative method for our process, our research process so far, but also as a physical exercise in spatial orientation. This also brought us to two very basic things, to get back to two very basic things: perspective and framing, which are connected, of course. Perspective as something that implies movement, that contains movement. Movement is embedded in perspective because of direction, because of intention, and because of distance, proximity, which then obviously is space. The way that the exhibition has been designed in that space doesn't imply doesn't suggest a certain order of events. So this encouraged us to understand, to look at the things we've done so far from many different angles, and that made us also pull that parallel to the treasure hunt as also being, a metaphor for the process that I'm going through. We don't give any information about the artworks. It's a bit more of a riddle through the building, encouraging the participants to maybe notice things inside of something else. And the visitors themselves, or the participant themselves, have to find the clues that lead them to the next room, to the next space, where the next kind of magical thing happens in this treasure hunt. If an object is left inside of the exhibition space, it will immediately be removed by the staff for security reasons. And so this kind of leave no trace policy naturally became a sort of guiding principle for our little choreography. And so we tried to design this parkour in such a way that the little events and happenings and hints along the way seemingly appeared and disappeared almost as if by chance or out of the blue. And our choreography, the 5 of us, involved organizing ourselves in such a way that the itinerary was almost hidden because it unfolded and disclosed for one specific point of view, namely the participant's point of view. So in that sense, all the magic, we tried to keep all the magic invisible to the other visitors in the space, and also to let the things come into being, so to speak, right in front of their noses, and then being cleaned up right after they left for the next event.